It is January 7th, 1943. Inside room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, an 86-year-old man lies dead. He is completely alone and deeply in debt. But within hours of his passing, his room is quietly swarmed. Representatives from the United States government's Office of Alien Property execute a clandestine raid, confiscating every trunk, notebook, and scientific paper he owns. It was the height of the Second World War, and authorities were terrified. The old man claimed he had designed a particle beam weapon he called Teleforce. The press labeled it a death ray. He envisioned an invisible wall of energy capable of melting the motors of incoming warplanes from 250 miles away. To the public, he was a washed-up eccentric, whose closest friends were the pigeons he fed in the park. The military, however, refused to take any chances with his lingering ideas. His name was Nikola Tesla. The question is how a man whose theories sparked a sudden national security panic became a footnote in history, while his rivals went down as legends. When Tesla stepped onto the docks of Manhattan in 1884, he carried a letter of recommendation and exactly 4 cents. He also possessed a distinct, rare advantage, an eidetic memory. He could design complex machinery in his head, mentally run the engine for weeks to test for friction, and debug the entire system before ever building a physical prototype. He took a job with Thomas Edison, but their methods were incompatible. Edison relied on brute force trial and error to refine direct current. Tesla used mathematics to argue for an alternating current system that hadn't even been built yet. This animation shows the core problem. Direct current power rapidly drops off over short distances. Tesla proposed alternating current instead. By using transformers, you could step up the voltage to push AC power across vast distances, and then safely step it down right before it entered a home. Edison retaliated with a ruthless corporate smear campaign to convince the public that alternating current was deadly. But backed by investor George Westinghouse, Tesla let the math and the superior technology speak for themselves to win the war of currents. The victory became undeniable at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Westinghouse outbid Edison to light the event, and millions of people witnessed 100,000 incandescent lamps glowing safely on Tesla's alternating current. In 1896, the first surge of power from the falls reached Buffalo, New York. For the first time, a centralized source could sustain the electricity needs of an entire region. By the age of 40, Tesla had electrified the globe. But stringing copper wire from pole to pole bored him. He was looking at the empty air, conceptualizing a future entirely free of wires. Tesla shifted his focus to resonance and high-frequency currents. He invented the Tesla coil, a resonant transformer circuit capable of stepping up low-voltage electricity to incredibly high frequencies. By tuning these coils, he transmitted energy through the air, illuminating unattached glass tubes across his lab using only the invisible electromagnetic field. He was preparing to broadcast a radio signal 50 miles away when, in 1895, a massive fire tore through his laboratory. Years of scientific notes and half-finished prototypes were destroyed in a single night. While Tesla scrambled to rebuild his livelihood, a young Italian inventor named Guglielmo Marconi sent the first transatlantic radio signal. Marconi secured his place in history and a Nobel Prize, though his system relied heavily on 17 of Tesla's existing patents. Undeterred by the radio waves, Tesla moved to Colorado Springs for his most extreme experiments. He theorized that the Earth itself is a giant electrical conductor. He believed that by pumping massive amounts of energy into the ground at the correct resonant frequency, he could create standing waves of electricity that could be tapped into anywhere on the planet. Armed with these findings, he approached J.P. Morgan, one of the wealthiest financiers in history. Tesla pitched a world wireless system, a global network capable of instantly transmitting messages and stock prices. Morgan provided the capital, and construction began on the massive Wardenclyffe Tower in Long Island. Tesla harbored a secret objective. He intended to use the tower to pump energy into the ionosphere and the Earth's crust, allowing anyone with a simple antenna and ground connection to pull free electricity right out of the air. When Morgan discovered the plan for wireless power, he reportedly asked one devastating question: If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter? Morgan severed all funding. Wall Street labeled the project a bad investment. In 1917, the magnificent tower was dynamited and sold for scrap metal to pay off Tesla's debts. The loss of Wardenclyffe broke something inside Tesla. The man who once dined with high society began a slow, permanent retreat into deep isolation. His eccentricities hardened into severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. He became intensely fixated on the number 3, requiring 18 napkins at every meal, and calculating the exact cubic volume of his food before he could bring himself to take a bite. Unable to maintain a laboratory, he spent his final decades bouncing between New York hotels, leaving whenever the bills piled too high. He withdrew from human companionship entirely, spending his days feeding local pigeons and bringing injured birds back to his room to nurse them. This was the man who died in room 3327. When the government finally evaluated those seized papers in 1943, an MIT physicist named John G. Trump officially concluded that the documents were purely speculative and held no military value. Society largely agreed. To the press, his final decades were the ramblings of a broken, bankrupt mind, finalizing his erasure from the top tier of historical inventors. Yet every time you flip a light switch today, you are relying on the exact alternating current power grid he championed over a century ago. Every modern drone, complex robotic system, and television remote relies on the radio control principles he first demonstrated with a miniature boat in 1898. At Wardenclyffe, Tesla envisioned a system that could broadcast stock tickers and images across the ocean instantly using resonant frequencies. Today, every device that pulls data from the air, from global satellite arrays to the smartphone in your pocket, operates on those same principles of wireless communication. Tesla died in a room paid for by others, but the electrical and wireless systems he fought for now dictate the rhythm of modern life. He spent his final days in isolation, having already provided the blueprints for the century that would eventually follow him.